like
Dennis,
that.
Dennis should be
Yeah,
here.
when Dennis gets
Done?
here at 7:15 for him.
Okay, well, let's carry on anyway. We're not voting on anything at this point in time. And did you, anybody hear anything from Maureen? Did you hear?
She's been in a car accident,
Oh,
she's
that's
fine.
right, car accident. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, she did, yeah.
She's okay,
Yeah, horrible.
but not in the mood.
Okay, so let's see if Dennis shows up, if we're gonna make any big decisions tonight. All right, so first part of the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything they want to add to it? Is everybody happy the way
We
it
can't do
is?
that.
Huh?
We can't do any of
Oh,
that.
no, we can't do anything. That's not, yeah.
Very official.
Anything.
Maybe
No.
Judy can start and.
Yeah.
I wanted to just, if it's okay, pick up on what you asked about the meeting being televised, or being
Recorded.
recorded. Because it's dealing with land, because it's the municipality subdivision and you are the applicant, in a way it's sort of like an applicant meeting, so I just wanted to put that out there, that there are plans that, as long as everyone's comfortable having them shared and the municipalities.
Yeah, I don't see that there's any issue there myself. I don't know what you.
Yeah, I think so.
think
Dinah was
that's fine.
comparing it to a variance application, that those are lots of public process.
Like in terms of, yeah, more of an application and then the public.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
One of our values is transparency as well.
Absolutely,
So we're
transparency
quite
all the way.
happy to be out there.
Great, thank you.
So
Thank you
just
for it.
without approving the agenda and everything, but we'll move on to the business. Unless anybody has a problem with that. So 4.1, Judy, thank you.
Yes, thank you. So, just, there's some stand up so I can see everything.
Sure.
What we wanted to do tonight, this is part of a council direction. I think it actually was a request that came from this committee, and also a council direction that the subdivision for lot 3 of the community lands come to this committee for discussion and for input. And very happy about that, because I think we really do need some direction from our applicant, which is essentially council.
Yes.
Raj has signed the papers. He is the applicant for the municipality, but really, this is a little bit different, where the approving officer can seek advice or input from anyone, but I think in this case it's a little bit different in that
Because we're the
you're
owners.
the applicant as well. So just a couple of key dates. Back in May, council approved an actual site plan. As you know, we'd had a number of working sessions. There have been various versions of plans. So I think Robin and Dan worked together to determine how they could work with the amount of land that the municipality was happy in putting forward for lease and for potential purchase for uses by BIRCH and by the Health Center Foundation. So the plan that we're dealing with tonight is the one that came forward in May, and the council endorsed it as the site plan. And then in July, council, just for the rest of the committee, so you know kind of where we are with this, council authorized the expenditure of up to $30,000 as an operating, from planning operating budget to actually do the work to get the subdivision forward. And this is to be shared 3 ways among the municipality, BIRCH, and the Health Center Foundation. And this will pay for the surveying costs, so we have just are dealing now with getting Bennett Land Surveying, who've done a lot of work in the area, and they're going to be our best bang for the buck. So Bennett, we also have a geotechnical Contour is our geotechnical consultant that we're just doing finalizing the contract with, and we have retained Core Engineering, the Core Group, which is the engineering firm which had been retained by Kim Johnson as a part of the team for the fire hall site. So they had already been on site to do civil work, so it made sense that we carry on with them. So this team, the team of Robin, Dan, and Tim, and the rest of us have met with Cormac Nolan, who's the principal of CORE. So he is out busy doing some of the work on the site. So we've had a pretty good assessment initially of an agreement on kind of how things might work, but there are a number of outstanding issues that we really need to
Okay.
talk to get agreement on a number of issues that.
Can I ask a question just on that? I'm just not sure of the municipal process on this, but the allocation of 30,000 from the planning operating budget, then to be applied against these various costs, surveying services and others. How do you have a sense of that 30,000 is the right number before you actually let or request bids and that sort of thing? Would like to more understand that process.
There was a report to council that went through all of that, but we
Okay.
essentially put out a proposal or put out the question to CORE.
Okay. Okay.
And so we got estimates from each of the subs and put that together in a report, and I can pass that along to.
No, that's fine. I was just more interested in what the process was. That's great, thanks.
So it's cut pretty fine to the bone, but you know, essentially, that's probably about what it's gonna take to get this going.
My
So,
concern would be that those came in at more than 30 and you had to go back and find more money.
yeah, we might have to, but I hope not.
Okay.
We're being pretty careful. So this doesn't show up too well, but I mean, this is essentially the subdivision of what we lovingly refer to as Lot 3, which has a much longer actual legal description. So there is a site of about an acre that has been identified for the fire hall, and as you know, it's been cleared, and just a bunch of stuff going on with that. Then lots 2 and 3 are the proposed lots for this one for the Health Center Foundation. This one, which council in their wisdom has given us a landlocked parcel here, set with no access onto a public street. So well, you know, but that's we can deal with that. So that's part of what we need to talk about. And then there's another area that is, how big is that? Robin, you probably know right off.
Oh, the remainder?
The remainder
I don't know,
is
it was in your,
0.603 hectares.
in your report here.
So
Like
over an
17.
acre of land
Acre and a half.
remaining. And that is an area, as you know, there's a big kind of rocky outcrop here. There's quite a developable parcel here. The access to the the municipal temporary parking lot is here. And so that remains in this subdivision as a remainder that the municipality at some point will have to decide what you want to do within the long term or short term. And what we do as part of the subdivision may help shape or provide some guidance on that. This didn't come out too well, and I'm going to have these guys do their bit because they've got their plans. So just really a preliminary, sorry, that's not what I meant to do. In a preliminary sense, what this plan shows is the issue of some of the easements that might be necessary, because the surveying costs will be about half for just doing the basic survey, but a lot of it will be the legal and other costs associated with easements and so on for servicing. So I'm just going to kind of park that for the moment, but just the things that we want to talk about tonight and that we want to capture and have you thinking about as you hear from Dan and from Robin is the issue of, in terms of servicing, as you know, there are existing services, both water and sewer, along Miller Road, but getting the sites hooked up aren't necessarily as easy as that given the lay of the land. So while the fire hall site will connect directly, it's likely that we will need a lift station in about this location, and we are suggesting that it go by way of easement on the fire hall property. And services for the health center and BIRCH will probably be pumped by that lift station, just because of the grades in the land. These guys will get into a little bit later in more detail. There are other easements that may be needed for mutual access, and what we want to talk to you about is the whole question of access, because I think one of the principles initially when we looked at the site was we want this well planned, we want it to hang together, we want good urban design, we want to minimize the number of access access points will be. One of the suggestions that we're making, and it's going to be, I think, shown why it is a very good solution. I keep doing that. The natural access point would be somewhere in this location, and exactly where we'll talk about. There will be a mutual easements for access between these two properties, and we're also suggesting that it would be a very good idea to have an easement over the fire hall property for access to these two uses in a limited capacity. And though that issue has been discussed with the fire chief and the deputy fire chief, who are both very, very agreeable to understanding that that could work in the interest of the efficiency of the land.
You say restricted access, Judy, so it would be
Well,
an emergency access or just?
I think I'll let
Yeah.
Dan and Robin talk about that in more detail. So just with that general overview, I'd like to call on each of them to walk you through the programs that they have so far. And
All right.
bearing in mind that everything is at a preliminary level. But
Yes,
I think
of course.
if you have a good idea of their programs, then we can go back then and talk about the subdivision.
Perfect, thank you. All right,
Like, I'll put the drawings up, but
Yeah.
feel free to
I will. I'll jump in.
jump in and yell screen or.
I might just,
text,
I might
Can I sit up here?
Can I use that
Hey, we
laptop?
have quorum.
Yes.
Steph, can Dan use this?
Can I use the laptop? Because it'll be easier if I.
Absolutely.
Hey, Dennis,
Scooch over on that side there.
pull up a chair to come up to the table here.
Yeah, that's fine. I will blow this up in a minute, but this is just to orient everybody. Mill Road's here, north is more or less straight up, Fire Hall's here, Second Park over here. That's the remainder, sorry, that should say lot through. BIRCH is here, Health Center is here. So what Judy was just talking about was having a shared access over the Fire Hall site to access a shared driveway between BIRCH and the Health Center. And I'll show you why that is in just a second. So that would be an access to, like, there's quite a lot of grade change. You can just see the contours here. So from this side of the site to here is about 19 feet, and then down to the corner of BIRCH is even lower. So we've got quite a lot of grade change to deal with here. So we've got a lower access point that comes in to the health center site. We've got employee parking down here, and then we've got parking for BIRCH at this point. So this is not public parking. It's not intended to be public parking for the health center. So it's a limited number of spaces. People who are familiar with the issues of going in and out of the fire hall and are aware that there could be and will be sometimes emergency vehicles coming and going. So we talked about that with the fire guys, and they were totally aboard with that. I thought they would have some reservations about it, but they were totally fine with that.
Okay.
So that's the lower level. And then if we go up, is there anything you want to say, Robin, on this?
No, if it helps people visualize, so this is just our concept design. We're in the process right now of hiring the architects. So this will likely change, but just, I did the concept just to kind of see what the most we could fit on there, how many stories it would be, the volumes and everything. So trying to maximize it, and it may in fact get smaller. But how I've got it is sort of two buildings. So one you can see sort of angled towards the park, and that would be down low, it would be 4 stories. And then one's a story up, so starting at this parking level, and it's also 4 stories, so kind of staggered down towards the park.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you got a courtyard in the middle, basically. and then
yeah, a
two
narrow
lots.
courtyard, yeah.
And then there's I think there's 10 parking spaces
I think we
here.
can get 10,
Yeah.
yeah, with, turnaround space, garbage servicing space, all of those things, I think 10 is feasible.
Yeah, so this is all work in progress. I mean, that's our caveat. We don't have detailed contour information yet. This is based on a LiDAR survey, so this is all gonna change a little bit as we work through the details of sort of turnarounds, parking, loading, recycling, garbage, all that. There's quite a lot to work out here.
Tom had a
Dan,
question.
just a question on that proposed easement access over the site designated for the fire hall.
Yep.
Do we know at this point where the fire hall access is going to be?
Yeah, it's right here.
Is it right next to that?
It's a shared access.
Okay, that's what I was trying to
It's
get
a
at.
double driveway, and the fire trucks will come out of the fire building to the north, but that will be a two-lane access in, so the only time it would be an issue at all would be when there was a call out for fire.
Okay.
And I think that we talked about if, one of the possibilities would be certainly anybody using the parking spaces, the employees and the residents would be aware that this would be an issue. And there's also the possibility to put a flashing light or some kind of a signal so that if there is a call, people are aware of that.
Sure, okay,
So,
well, that's fine.
I think that everyone really had a comfort level with the
Good.
fact that it could work.
Yeah, excellent.
And the issue is, like Judy said, it's not the fire trucks. The fire trucks are separate, like they'll go straight out of the fire hall, straight onto Miller. It's
Yeah.
the access for the volunteer firefighters who are arriving in the event of a call. Because they.
Okay, so it's not the emergency vehicles that
No.
are gonna use that. Okay, that's great, thank you so much.
I mean, when they return, they use that.
Yeah,
but
no,
when they're
that's
coming
fine.
out of the day.
It's a whole different circumstance. Yeah.
Sorry, this is so small, it's a PDF, it doesn't read all that well, but, so this is the upper level of the parking lot. So again, that grade change is about 19 feet from here to here, so that
Oh,
lower level
okay.
is an access down to this lower lot, and then there'd actually be a grade change, like retaining walls and that kind of thing to step up to this higher section.
Okay.
So this would be the main public access to get to the health center, and it would also access whatever, this is part of the discussion tonight, whatever wants to happen here, whether it's parking or whether it's building, we don't know. But, I mean, I just showed a parking layout out of curiosity to see, how many spaces you could fit in this area, and that's about 40 spaces. This could
Yeah.
be carved off as a separate lot if you wanted to. Like that's, a little bit smaller than the lots right across the street, but it's more or less similar size. That's about 56 feet by about 130. So if you did want to carve out a lot, that could be used for mixed use, like commercial on the ground floor, residential up above, or live work or something. I don't know. That's one option. The other option is to have this as parking, and then just to keep the remainder of that lot 3, the entire section free of parking. So right now we've got the commuter parking here.
Yes.
I'm not quite sure what the municipality's plan is, whether you want to keep some of that parking, any of the parking, none of it, or it's an open discussion. So all I know is that
Yeah.
when these buildings are developed, that all that parking is going to disappear.
Correct, yeah.
Some,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just thinking for the entrance into that, it's quite blind right now. I think going into the top part of that parking lot,
Yeah, it is.
as far as the visibility.
I do it almost every morning, and
Yeah,
it can be tough.
Getting in
trenches.
or out?
Getting in, coming from the north,
yeah.
because there's a crest of the hill there in front of the police where the RCP house is, and there's definitely a blind spot there.
It's just a consideration.
Yeah.
I don't know how this sort of aligns with that, but
Well, you've got, the existing entrance is pretty close to here.
Yeah, I think it is.
The RCMP is here, so
Yeah.
it's just down, so it's pretty close to that, and then the exit is somewhere down here. So it's close there. I know Bob has taken a look at this, and he tried to come up with an ideal.
I would say it's even further south than this, than
Is
that.
it? Yeah.
The entry part, there's an entry and exit route,
Yes.
but the entry route is down closer to the boundary with the RCP property.
Yeah,
It's
it's
down,
only-
it's down in there.
It's only about 1 car space and maybe a little more.
That's right.
From
Okay.
the
It
sub
is,
property
yeah.
line.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's
It's
good.
but it's the northern one that's the more blind one, or the southern?
No, the southerly one, yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think the north one when you're leaving is also not great.
Well, yeah, but it's really, when you've got your signal on and you're turning into that parking lot coming from the north, you gotta go for it, because you can't see what's
No.
coming over there.
Right.
over that, okay.
Yeah.
I think when we did the original proposal, it was moved sort of halfway between
Yes,
2 points, and that was the point that Bob had thought had
Probably
probably
the
had the
best.
best visibility,
Yeah.
given that it's grade,
Sure.
which is totally doable. And one of the, I don't know if you brought that sketch along, Dan, but there was a sketch that shows the access moved down a little bit with the roll parking.
Yeah, I brought that, I was sure you did.
Yeah. The issue with that is, I think, that it doesn't, it provides all of the parking up by the street. It wouldn't provide sufficient room to have any kind of a developable lot along the road frontage.
no,
So, I mean, that is one of the trade-offs that we can talk about.
This existing access point that is shown on your plan here, I would guess that's probably much closer to the exit road from the existing parking lot. It's probably up closer to where that is.
Yeah, I think it's back up there
Oh,
somewhere.
it's even further, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
In
Okay.
the middle of the,
So this one might be a bit better.
Is it? Okay.
All right, sorry for the interruption there.
Yeah, sorry.
So this version, I'm showing, this is the Bowen Island Health Center lot line.
Yeah.
So the parking is all on our lot, and then we've got a walkway. We've been trying to get this walkway that goes through to Griffin.
Yeah.
Somehow, like some connection that goes through both these lots. So in this case, we've got a bit of a dog leg to get that to work. I've got another version that, I think it's the next slide, let's just see. So this version, I just wanted to try it out. So this has a straight access all the way through, and then it puts the parking not on the health center lot, pushes it onto the municipal side, and it allows a clearer access through. And that kind of frees up this corner as well. Right now, with the parking in here, it starts to get pretty tight to the building. We're getting a little crunch for space in there. That also shows smaller public parking space here, and then the remainder of that lot is left free to parking. So I don't know what the plan is for this lot, what the uses might be, how much or how little traffic might be going in there, but the access point is, we've got quite a lot happening here. If there's some sort of public parking access for the health center, there may be some visitor parking for BIRCH. This is the main access point for this lot. There's actually quite a bit going on here, so it's just something to be aware of. And there's also a lot of topography here. It drops off quite a bit. So realistically, there's not going to be parking down here probably. So to get to it would be too challenging. So if there is parking in this lot, it's probably going to be on the high side, so it's easy to access from here.
And certainly just from a design point of view and use, this is our preferred. I mean, I understand the parking issues and not being on the site, so that's to be debated, but I like the design aspect of having a pretty linear, straightforward pedestrian path connecting the park to Miller Road. I also like that, because I'm sure the driveway and the parking for the health center will likely be paved, just because of the people using it and all of that stuff.
Yep.
And it means that the residual area for parking, if that's what it's intended, because it's being used that way anyways, could be that rough gravel, it doesn't have to be a finished, polished parking lot. It could just be similar to what it is now and just kind of cram as many, spaces in as you can get and still maintain some commuter parking, although it won't be as much as it is now. So yeah, this is certainly our preference, but it doesn't impact us nearly as much as it does the health center, because we're getting as much parking as we can on site and without, massive work to blast out rock and putting access further down and getting more onto our site, or parking off of the fire hall, which I don't think is gonna, I think we've, as BIRCH, have kind of maximized what we can do in terms of parking on our physical property.
Yep. It's pretty good when you get 10 spots on there.
The earlier scheme, which showed a dog leg, actually could be, just sort of angled, so it's not so abrupt. I would think that, it's not too bad to have something that sort of changes a little bit in there. But one of the things is you're addressing one of my issues, and that is on the next one, where we were. You had street trees along there. Is there not room to provide some decent walkway and street tree treatment along Mill Road?
Well, our property line is right here.
Uh-huh.
There's an allowance for road set, or for increase in the width of Miller Road.
That's correct.
So depending what the municipality does with that, yes, there is space out here.
Okay,
And also the building is set back from Miller, so there is space for landscaping along for sure.
okay,
Yeah.
excellent.
And then just for fun, I thought I'd show you this. It's just a 3D of the floor plan. We don't have to get into detail. That's the fire hall site there. That's that shared access.
Mhm.
And then basically this is all backfilled. The site slopes up at this end, and then we've got basically that's all open out to grade there. So we've got like dental, physio, some service spaces, staff room, services, and then at the floor above, that's the main floor. So that's the main entrance to the building is here. So the public parking is right here, just off the screen.
Nice.
And that's a community room. I've got stairs and elevator and waiting room here, which faces out to Miller. And administration, reception, and that's all the clinical spaces back in here. Exam rooms and doctors, and then back here there's a, I won't call it an emergency, it's a treatment room. Urgent care. Tim would use it from time to time.
Would that be accessible from the fire hall site?
No, this
So that wouldn't be the ambulance?
that is the ambulance.
It is, okay.
Yeah, and I'll show you.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into the
No,
detailed design of this too much, but
Yeah.
that's Miller right there. So that's the ambulance access.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yep.
that's great.
And then it
Wow.
steps down, and then that's the access to the fire hall site.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have a grade at floor one is gonna be a grade with Miller, basically. And then you're gonna put a sort of a lower level,
Well,
as well as a
Miller's-
second story.
Miller steps all the way down here. So this end, that is Miller, actually. So that is level going across to Miller. And the upper end, that's also access, level access. So
Oh,
it slopes up quite a bit there.
Yeah.
But your parking in the back is gonna be down, right?
The parking,
Lower level.
that's at the lower level, that's correct. So let's
Yeah.
call it level one.
Staff parking.
Staff parking's at level one.
So would there be any services or facilities or anything at that level?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Dentist, physio, there's space
Oh.
for a rental suite as well.
Okay.
Which is why we really wanted to use the fire hall side.
Yeah.
Because getting the parking down there, if you can visualize it, means that that whole lower level for you guys and a bit for us can be daylit.
That's
As
great.
opposed to, we were doing ones where we came in from the top, and it really meant that's like buried,
Yeah.
right? Whereas this way, dropping that grade down really opens up those levels to some daylight, so I think it makes their lower level a lot more visible.
It ties the site better into the fire hall site too. If you picture, otherwise it was gonna, you're gonna come in
Yeah.
and drive and then end at essentially a
Oh.
wall, right?
Yeah.
There's a story difference between the fire hall, would just be looking at like the.
Yeah.
So there's a much
wall.
better flow on the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. That's great.
Yeah.
And that's in from the other side. So that's the main entrance to the building. That's the upper level parking. You know, so that's basically level access in here. This is not totally accurate. This actually slopes up to Miller here, so there'd actually be retaining wall here, but more or less level access into the main entrance of the building. And then it drops off this way down.
And so Dan, that path too, that would be the access for BIRCH, like the
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's
pedestrian
right there,
access to
yeah.
BIRCH,
That's
that's
right.
right, that path.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you do a sketch with the other option?
The other access to
The other
BIRCH.
access option?
No, these were done quite a while ago, actually.
I love that. What about expansion? Is there any room for, can you go up or?
If you go back here,
Yeah,
there, you see the lower parking?
correct,
We
yeah.
could put, that's the ground floor, at the entry level floor, we could extend out over the parking.
Oh, yeah.
So that would end up being covered parking, and we have a significant amount of expansion there.
Mhm.
Yeah, so 20 by what? 20 by 100 maybe? 2,000
Probably a
square
little bit
feet.
less than that.
Less than that.
Yeah, so it's basically in that area, plus or minus.
Yeah.
You know, so we just basically would put a, you know, this hallway would continue out, and you could get more spaces over here.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to have that option.
Yeah,
It'd
I
be
mean, it's
expensive
way down
option
the
to go right now,
road,
but-
because
Yeah.
we don't see needing to expand perhaps anything but the urgent care area for many years.
Okay, that's good.
That's great.
Wow. That's great. Good work.
So it's starting to feel like a building, you know, it's obviously got a long ways to go, and we have lots of issues to sort out, but it's starting to feel real, and we've done a fair bit of effort to work with the grades on the site, like this is
Yes.
not a flat site, there's a lot to work with. And then getting the access points, you know, for BIRCH to work, and the fire hall, the upper parking is all pretty, you know, starting to come together.
Very nice.
Anything else that we need to raise, Robin?
Not that I can think of at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just
yeah.
wanted to clarify that if you go with option one, you will be able to fit the majority of your parking.
That's what you mean by majority. 50% plus one.
As we go through this, certainly BIRCH will need to come to council for variances, development variance permits for height
And
of the building and for parking supply, because they're going to have a substantially lower parking supply than would be in the bylaw, but similar to what the municipality has already allowed across the street on Lot 2.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
Just saying.
Just saying, yeah.
The Health Center Foundation may need a variance as well for some of their parking, and right now we really don't know what the municipality's plans are for the remnant parcel in terms of the desire to retain temporary commuter parking
Yeah.
on that lot. We don't have budget right now that I'm aware of, so I think that's one of the things that we might want to discuss in another forum, but first of all, what the plans should be for some continued commuter parking, some additional parking, because I think even though we're doing our very best to meet the parking standards, I think given the parking demands of a health clinic, we might be a little tight, and also we don't have provision for visitor parking for BIRCH. So we might want to talk about some shared parking. Certainly there will be the access that will come in that will provide access to the parking for the health center and the parking and access for BIRCH.
Yeah.
On some of the parking for BIRCH. It will also provide the access onto the municipal site for any future uses and for parking on the municipal site. So going forward, we probably are going to have to talk about how we want to keep our options open,
Mhm.
what we want to do in the short term and thinking to the long term, and also maybe freeing up some budget to cost share in terms of designing and constructing those access points.
Yeah, I think, obviously there's gonna be a parking crunch in Cove one more time, and, where it gets located. Depending on what's going on Lot 3 here, I would assume, and I'm only assuming that we would put some kind of temporary commuter parking in there, or public parking. And I think it's exactly the way it is now, with that commuter parking, it can be easily, turned over into something else at the time, and, we just sort of keep working this thing along, because we're gonna lose part of that parking lot for sure when this happens, and we're also gonna lose the other parking lot on the lot that's sold perhaps. So that's significant, that's probably 30 spots right there. And, we have to start looking at options, there's no question about that. But I that's a discussion we can have around the table here later, but, as far as the parking is concerned, I think we'll have public parking, and BIRCH will have to use, the visitor parking will be part of the public parking operation probably.
Which I think will be very complimentary, right? If it's
I
being
think so.
used by commuters in
Yeah.
the day,
Yeah.
and there's more residential visitors in the evening, I think it'll be fine.
It's, now obviously the other consideration, which I know this committee would love to get their teeth into, would be kind of like, where is this lot going? And what is the ultimate plan? How are we gonna access the rest of that lot? Is the road gonna be back towards the RCMP compound, or, which I probably think that would work, but that's a discussion we should have, just so we don't make missteps at the front end here and mess up the back end, sort of is what I'm thinking. We don't want to do it twice. But that's certainly a discussion, we can have. Fritz?
Yeah, what I kind of think is that eventually some parking has to go underground, because we're just pushing it all the way down, and at a certain point we just, this is nothing.
Yeah.
Now with that lot, that part of the lot that sits lower below Birch, if it would be taken into account, if the lower part maybe could become some kind of below grade parking in the future, and maybe that's just part of the obligation from whoever buys that lot, that they have to provide parking that has been drifting above ground forever.
Yeah, and I certainly think that that can be a consideration in the future. I don't think that's something that, Birch wants to get into by any stretch of the imagination, but I think going forward in a different scenario and a different type of housing, I think it's going to be mandatory.
Because like the problem we have here is that as the parking is being pushed onto the lot, and commuters are using it, you don't want to have some kind of a revolt.
Yeah.
There's nothing that can be done with the remainder of the lands until it has been addressed.
No.
So I think these plans are good and they're realistic, but one day in the future, we probably figure from there should have been more parking, but I guess it's just not affordable at this time.
It's
It's just like
I don't know. And like Judy alluded to, we just approved cut back on the parking on the lot, the corner lot. It's for sale.
You're considering but haven't approved.
Sorry?
You're considering but haven't approved.
Considering but haven't approved yet. So we'll see how that goes. But
that's one more thing. I was a bit puzzled by why do you need variances if you're kind of writing a new zoning bylaw? Or can it be addressed with zoning, or does it all have to be with variances?
We're not doing these.
I'm just asking, what's the best way of doing that? You're writing a bylaw and all that, and then it implies that everybody needs variances from the bylaw.
Birch doesn't need a rezoning, they only need variances for height and parking, so
Okay.
all of their uses are okay in the zoning. I think all of the setbacks work, so.
So this is all done on the existing village zone?
Actually, with the health plan, we're just adding the zoning, but,
yeah.
Could that not be done for Birch? Rather than, I kind of go along with what Fritz is saying. Why would you impose zoning that requires a variance?
So we're not
No, but couldn't you do something so that that wasn't the case, I guess is my question.
I mean, I guess we could rezone the property or change the zoning for all village commercial, but it makes sense for a one site within the village commercial zone rather than changing the zoning. For this one, we don't have permanent plans yet, even Birch.
But if Birch is a success at 4 stories or whatever we end up being, I think that's a strong case to say, hey, we really need to revisit our commercial zoning that limits it to X height now, and in the future, which is what I'm getting from this committee, we want to start to go higher and, a little more urban, that maybe, but I get the sense, and for the, efficiency of our project, I'm not sure if that's what we want to go into, and
No,
it's a lot
still
simpler.
an answer for my question about it, because is there anything in the existing zoning for the medical center or for Birch that limits you unnecessarily? Because the other way, possibly, that this could be done with a comprehensive development zone,
Exactly.
which is used all over the place in Bowen Island. So if you would have something that, because as architects we constantly read everything we're not supposed to do. It's endless, right? The first thing you do as an architect is try to figure out everything you cannot design. Nobody would have known what could have been there. It's already restricted, right? So I feel that if you, and this of course up to planning council, but if you would feel that there's something in the bylaw that restricts you, is that, can you identify that? And that, whatever, Daniel also, no. Because I find that normally zoning bylaws are kind of terrible because they only restrict of what you can do, right? So, if you run into something, I think that,
For us, for sure, it was parking and height was what we came to. And I feel like 4 stories is the right number. I don't know if Bowen's ready for a 6-story building.
No, I don't think so.
So I feel like 4 4 is already kind of pushing the envelope, and let's see how that goes, so.
6 stories mean 2 stories of parking and 4 above it.
More so because 6 is that magic number, you can still do wood frame, after that you go to concrete, which, you know, it's a whole other ballgame, so.
As far as that 4 stories, is that, does that require a fire hall change or?
Well, I ran it
Truck
past
change
the
or-
last chief several months ago,
Okay,
and he seemed to think it was not a problem.
okay.
Like as a concept, I said, hey, this is how tall we're thinking about going, and he seemed to think that it wasn't an issue, that maybe there was some apparatus that, you know,
Oh,
needed
that's
to be
right, yeah,
recommended to purchase or something, I didn't quite catch it, but he seemed to think that the fire hall's equipment and abilities were not a limit for a 4-story building.
Mm-hmm.
So we can, of course, confirm that once we're a little
Yeah.
further along in our schematic design.
Yeah, I guess it's obviously gonna be on a slope too, so it's not, the
Yeah,
front's gonna
and
be 3 stories probably.
right next to the fire hall, so, you know,
Yeah,
that's
that's
all us.
We'll get them to put a
Yeah.
tower in and then we don't have to worry about it.
But no, it's definitely 4 stories from any point, like
Oh, it
it's
is,
4
okay.
here and 4
Yeah.
there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it's tall.
And how many units have you got in there? 27?
27. And
that's
again, I
what
think
thought.
that's the max. It
Yeah.
may shrink from there depending on how the
Okay.
sign goes, but that's the most we can get in.
Robin, could you just remind me, on your building at the back, I think your intention was to have grade level access to those units
At the
on the
park
ground
level?
floor?
So I've designed
Okay.
those at the moment as the larger units. So we have a couple of 3 bedrooms, thinking those are for families.
Okay.
We have 1 4-bedroom unit, which we're sort of aiming at maybe roommates, but could also be a large family. And one thing that I want to discuss with the architects, and as we go through this, I know a building in, and just gauge if there's an interest in the community, there's a building that was designed in Vancouver that purposely designed a unit for an at-home daycare. So that somebody could have, I forget what the numbers are, you can have a certain number of kids in an at-home daycare. So they designed this unit. 6. Is it 6? There you go. With that in mind. So it was just, anyways, it's something on my mind, and then that would be a grade as well.
Okay.
Don't, you know,
No,
hold
I
me
was
that
just-
at all.
no,
But
that's
that's the idea, that we would specifically think about those units at ground level that could
Okay.
make use of the park,
That's what I thought.
have some greenery, yeah.
Thanks.
But yeah, certainly everybody also have balconies. Yeah.
Well, I certainly like that access, those ideas I think are great.
In terms of access, while we're discussing, I mean, I think we have a comfort level that, looking forward to the efficiency of the site, the easement for the lift station, and for the access over the firehouse, I think there's generally agreement on. If we could switch back and forth between the two again, Dan, and just, I would like to, because we're dealing with engineering and surveyors and.
Yeah,
it's-
absolutely.
It's kind of time when we need to start giving some direction in terms of where we want to go, and I'm not sure whether it's something that we want to check with all of council, or if the committee's happy in providing some direction, but,
Well, we report to council, so we'll end up at council anyway. Yeah.
so, yeah, so with the, do you have that where you can show it with the access points, or the,
Zoom out a little bit.
zoom out a little bit, so yeah, we can see the driveway locations.
Is that too far out or?
Too far out, where you had,
I'm not sure which one you're looking for, too, so just
yeah,
Tell me
okay,
when
that's
it's
good,
done.
that's perfect. So there is that version that has the, you've got the,
So the parking on their property, right?
yes.
You're in charge.
So we have this version that has the property line.
Yeah,
And I mean, these are small properties, and I think, you know, I applaud both Robin and Dan for the work they've done
absolutely. yeah.
in working with what they've been given to maximize and work together. And
That's
it's
fantastic, yes.
couldn't have asked for a better team to pull this together. So we have the property line along here, and then we would have this driveway, which would be on the municipal lot,
Yep.
snug against the property line, and then the driveways directly off of that driveway So you would, and then you would have the walkway doing this. And then as Dan indicated, you have, it's not a large, but a reasonable site here.
Yeah,
that
good.
It does have the advantage of having some frontage on Miller Road. And then the other one, Dan, is the option that is pretty similar, but again, this is the property line. It would have a little nicer space here in that there could be some outdoor sitting area. It could be a sort of nicer presentation, a little bit of landscaping and a walkway straight through. And the access way would be on the parking. So in this circumstance, there would have to be an arrangement between the Health Center Foundation and BIRCH and the municipality in order to
Secure those spots.
determine who bills them, how they're paid for it. I mean, this is a
Yeah.
whole extra level of.
Yeah.
But it is a different design, and there still would be somewhat of a site down here. Dan, did you notice the sizes of these parcels, or?
On the previous version, yeah. So that lot is about 56 feet, a little more than 56 by 132 feet.
So
On
6,000
the first
square
version.
feet.
Yeah, it's a bit more than that, maybe 9,000.
9,000 square.
I think so.
It's bigger at the back.
Yeah, and then this, that's not really big enough to get a realistic lot in there, so I mean, if anything, I think that'd be parking.
So it is a matter of where we ask the engineer, or we could just do a larger easement at this point in time that would provide accommodation for both. It is where we ask the engineer to look at the access point.
Yeah. So you need a decision on that?
It would be good.
Yeah.
Can we make comments on that? Those sort of things?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I see your
Yeah.
discussion.
Great.
By all means.
Just personal preference, I actually prefer the other access route coming in with a bit of dogleg in it. I think, to me, it just made me think, I was up at a conference in Soyuz last week, and I was in this really nice resort on the waterfront, except for the fact that it had hallways that were 10 miles long.
That's
And you
great.
turn down your hall to your room, and it's as far as you can see with the naked eye. Like, it was ridiculous to me in terms of a planning exercise. So I love the idea of a break in line of sight. It just challenges you a little bit to think beyond. And also, I like the idea on the other slide of,
And
You
I'll
can take this to your
hand
seat,
that to you.
or you can just here.
oh, no, I probably don't need it. I think on this one, to me, what I see as real value here is, in terms of conceptualizing this, is retaining enough of a lot to the south that would be buildable. I think that's quite important in terms of our longer-term planning about what's to be done with the rest of the site. And the fact that parking is consolidated over in that area, to me, might be a fit, ultimately, in thinking about future, where, there might be the opportunity for somebody to build over top of that.
Yeah.
And that, to me, provides a lot more flexibility in terms of what happens with the rest of the site. So those are my comments.
I agree with those comments, and it also still leaves open the opportunity if the clinic wanted to expand or had a good reason for outdoor, nice gardens and stuff for people, that parking could be relocated into the greater mix of parking, so that it provides a little flexibility for everyone, I think. But I certainly agree that I think we need a developable parcel there, so that we're not freezing that land until the RCMP may decide to sell us their property.
So what is that, a quarter acre left, I think, at the bottom there? 30,000 square feet to an acre?
Well, it's going to be the building face, and I think you certainly need that 55 or 60 feet on Miller Road for anybody to go in there, and it may wrap around, it depends on what kind of building it is.
Yeah.
If it's, and it could wrap around, it could be a multi-use building with restaurants on the back side, or there's a lot of opportunity there if we've got some of that critical width on Miller.
I think it's certainly something we can task this committee with, is just looking at options on Lot 3 as far as just basic, infrastructure there. And where would the road be best put, and that sort of thing. Of course, there's a whole bunch of X factors like the RCMP property and that sort of thing, but I think that can be taken into consideration and put some weight on that to a certain extent and say, well, if it does come available, we do have an option to do this or whatever. So, I think that can certainly be a discussion, and we can have something to go forward to council.
Could I jump in? I'm sorry, this is something
Sure.
that Liz and I just saw now, so we haven't really talked about this. Something I just noticed is, like, for imagining our building, right? And
Yeah.
people, which hopefully will
Want
walk
this, Robin?
to and from, I'll just stand up here.
Okay.
All right. I was just realizing, this is private property, right? So like,
Yes.
this is the health center.
Yeah.
And if we're relying on that being our main pedestrian connection, I'm just seeing people are gonna walk through the parking lot, right? Like, they're probably not gonna, this is gonna be quite a, so what's just occurred to me now is I wonder if we consider somewhere here a walkway as well, and potentially this is gonna be a gravel temporary parking lot,
Yeah.
right? If that's the direction we
Yeah.
go.
Good point.
Would we consider a walkway here,
Sure.
that connects into the park? Because you have to remember, there's this big rock outcrop, and there's currently kind of a curved path that goes around it here.
Yeah.
So if we actually maybe tied it, and we can look at it more comprehensively, but I'm just realizing for the residents, I think that makes a little bit more sense, having the options, but not feeling like you have to go onto the medical center. That was
Yeah.
what I was getting at, where I really
Yeah.
liked
Yeah,
the
that's
straight
good.
line.
That's a
Because it
great
was so
point.
clear for the residents that this is like a public one to access everything. I worry, especially because this is gonna be retaining, going up, right? It's gonna feel like it's on the medical center property. So, I quite like that maybe we could look at the site design of something, along there, and I think that would work for commuters and BIRCH and, so I don't know what that looks like exactly, but, so like, in terms of whose property and easements and who develops it, I don't know yet, but.
Well, I guess the other thing is, if that is a temporary parking lot or whatever, then that
Yeah.
optional lot, that would naturally go through that.
Well, exactly, so I think it would serve both
Yeah.
purposes. So as long as that's something we can kind of think about in terms of, and again, I don't know if it has to be an easement or if it's just an understanding at the moment, or something that in future, as this is developed, that or some version of that is maintained.
Remains, yeah.
That remains
absolutely.
for everybody. And that's maybe the more public connection from Miller to the park,
Yes,
as opposed to relying on the medical center to provide it. Because,
that's
yeah,
true,
you
it is
guys might need
private
to change
property.
things, you might, if it's
They're gonna
private
have to
property.
they're gonna have to maintain it.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
and
that's right.
they're gonna own it, right? As
Yeah,
opposed to us,
that's
or at least we could cooperate a little more, but you guys are gonna own it, so to have that be the only public access. So I think, sorry, that just kind of came to me now, so
And I guess,
it's a bit last minute.
well, I guess when you're talking about that, you can also move that piece off the BIRCH property.
Yeah, which,
Obviously,
yeah,
I mean,
so I think we can look at,
if it's a public access,
If it's
I don't know
public
why
access.
you're having to maintain it
no, I
on
think you're
private
right, it would
property.
be sort of in here, and then we would,
Yeah.
whatever works for our
Compromise in
end.
bedroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I
Yeah.
don't think there's any reason that it has to be on those two lots.
No. I love the concept, but I think
Yeah.
we could move it over and take it off your hands. There's no reason why
Please
you
do,
get stuck with
Yeah.
that. Oh,
please
okay.
do.
Surprising. Yeah,
I think
Glenn.
for me, what jumps out at me with this concept is the decision on whether you want a parking lot and accommodating cars as the focal point as your street front off Miller. I think
Right.
that's, it provides the option for something more attractive and appealing along the frontage of
Mhm.
Miller, and kind of puts the cars, focus of cars in the back of the house.
Are you consider that the back of the house now?
Well, yeah, only
Yeah.
because it's, you know, it's a bit.
So are you saying that's a good idea or a bad idea, that this site plan?
A good idea.
Yeah,
From
yeah.
my perspective,
Well, there is quite a bit more developable land to the south of this
yeah.
parking
I
lot.
appreciate that, yeah.
So
But it
it's,
doesn't, yeah, but, it would have been helpful for me, I'm still learning that, there is there access that will come directly off and frontage off onto Trunk Road, or?
It's very difficult access. It's easy to get pedestrian access, I think, from that lot through to Trunk Road, but vehicle access just with the grades is very difficult. So I think that while I really like Dan's drawing, I might extend that lot further back into that parking lot, make a bigger development site there and push the parking further south of what we can see.
Yeah, we can certainly, none of this parking I don't think is gonna be permanent at this point in time until it's kind of a catch-22, isn't it? You want to plan it and say, well, this is where the parking's gonna go, but we're not quite ready to do that yet. So I don't know if we just designate space, and that's something the committee can certainly talk about it. Where we think the parking could be.
So what is needed from this committee today in terms of those expenditures that are identified? What would you like from us in terms of a recommendation to council?
Yes, thank you. And we didn't put a proposed recommendation here because I wanted to just bring the issues forward for discussion and to see where they went.
Sure.
But I think that there does seem to be a fairly clear consensus of direction where the committee members are going. So I think perhaps a recommendation to council that we move forward generally with this concept.
Yes.
So can we call it option A?
We'll call it option A, is that okay?
Can I just add to that, with the modification of the public
Yeah,
access
with-
route
Yeah.
Yeah.
that we've discussed? Is that it?
And with that, and also with support for the easement for access and for the lift station on the fire hall.
Using access in the
Yeah.
firehouse site?
Yeah.
So what I can do is work with staff to fancy that up and put some
Yeah.
drawings with that, but if that's council's or the committee's general agreement, then a motion in that direction would be great.
Is it?
I think, so, you know, some of the parking and the funding issues will come later, but I think at this point in time, just,
Yeah.
if we're going one step at a time, just getting the design of the subdivision enough so that we can get the
Yes.
restaurant easements done, and
Yep.
we'll be back to you with the issues of, I think, further issues about uses and how we deal with the remainder of the
At the present time, in that firewall lot, isn't there an extra piece of property on the side of this, on the side of the lot? Because I'm trying to think, or did we turn?
There's a bit of there's a
Eas-
buffer between
yeah.
the parking, the edge of the parking lot and Crippen Park. That is a buffer area.
I was thinking more on this side.
No.
So, no way. Okay.
And that buffer area is the area where the lift station would go, but it would be submerged. So
Yes.
that once there was an initial distributor's space.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, there was some other, I think in the fire hall plan, there was some other tanks and stuff back there anyway,
Yeah,
wasn't there?
So it fits in
that's,
perfectly, like right behind almost where the tanks go. So the tanks are quite, just that little bit off
Yeah.
the Crippen property line, and so the lift station would fit into right behind them.
Yeah.
and I think
All
that that's one of the
mechanical
things
back
that's been identified in our discussion is that certainly the propane tank, the location of tanks may have to be moved a little further over, because I think when the fire hall was first designed, there wasn't a lot line to be set back from.
Yeah,
Now that there's a residential lot line there, the propane tank has to be at least, I think, 3 meters,
I would say at least, yeah, right, not a big deal, yeah.
which doesn't seem like a lot.
10.
Or maybe that's not a
Put the
lot.
pump station, put the pump station in there.
I know Aaron had the exact number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he in that meeting, he basically just said they would put the propane at the far end of the designated area they had already for all the various tanks and generators.
Yeah.
They would just put propane at the farthest
Yeah.
and put the other ones in. And I think we'll tell our architects basically just to make that a pretty blank, solid wall, at least for the first couple stories, because if there's generators and stuff, it's gonna potentially be noisy, so.
Of course, so now the other issue is height.
I don't know that we're discussing that tonight, but I'm happy to hear your feedback.
Well, it's part of the densification issue that we're going to talk about in a little while here. You know, the aim is to get more product into the Cove, as it were, and just yourself, it's 4 stories is what you have. That's what you have to do to accomplish that, and to make it viable. You know, that's the bottom line. And I think there's a lot of places in the Cove that maybe maybe utilized if they did have a 4-story limit instead of a 3-story limit. So obviously, again, that's something we haven't discussed at the committee level too much at this point in time. But it's coming. It's coming, because that was one of the first things we wanted to discuss, getting back into some format in here, and discussing where we're going to go for the rest of 2019 and 2020.
Well, it would certainly be good feedback, and I have to go, but I'll probably watch the video of your discussion after this. Like, do you want us to go higher? Like, it's. I feel like that's the right number, but again, like if that's something you want to start pushing, no.
Yeah, I don't.
So we're the ones setting the example for the height that you want to see.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think 4 stories is probably all the community will probably
Yeah.
absorb too.
Yeah.
That's the other issue. So,
Good.
which I think is fair, Judy. Yeah. Yeah. So, is that sort of it for your discussion? It is. Well, thank you.
So can we get a vote on that, though, please?
Yeah, we'll get a vote on it.
Maybe you could read those back to us.
Yeah,
Just
that
so
the
everybody
committee recommend to council that option A of the concept design as presented at its October 29th meeting be pursued, and that committee supports creation of an easement on the fire hall site in order to provide access to the health center and community housing, and on which to install a lift station.
Okay. How's that sound, Judy?
That sounds, and then we
Did
just
we
want to
want to-
explore the walkway.
Yeah, did we want to make mention of
I
a
think so.
pedestrian link from Miller to the park
On
that?
municipal, on municipal.
Yes.
Pedestrian lake, you
Yeah,
say?
on the
Link.
Link.
Like,
From Miller Road
From Miller Road
To the park.
to Crippen Park,
On
On the
municipal.
remnant lot.
Through the remainder of lot 3.
Yeah.
be created. Remainder or the
Through the-
remnant?
Through the remainder. It's not a remnant.
The
It's way bigger than a
remainder of
remnant.
lot
Pick your adjective.
3,
Yeah.
to the north of the remainder of lot 3?
It'll be, yeah.
It would be south of the,
New drive
of
aisle?
the drive, south of the drive.
Access
Yeah.
road?
Sorry,
South of the driveway.
South of the proposed
Yeah,
driveway.
south of the proposed driveway.
And we got the fire hall thing there, sorry.
And the fire hall thing is still there.
All right.
Okay,
Want to get that
Again?
one, get that one more try.
okay. Recommend to council that option A of the concept design as presented at its October 29th meeting be pursued, and that the committee supports the creation of an easement on the fire hall site in order to provide access to the health center and community housing, and on which to install a lift station, and that a pedestrian link from Miller Road to Crippen Park be created through the remainder of lot 3 south of the proposed driveway.
Beauty.
That's pretty good.
And we'll get a sketch then to accompany that.
Yes.
to council.
I think you're gonna need one because it's a little bit vague. We understand it.
You can see it.
So I'll move that.
Second.
Tom for a second. And any further discussion on that? All in favor? Thank you. It is passed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
it's looking good.
Wow.
It's been a bumpy road, but it's getting there.
I'm impressed, Dan.
Great work.
Huh?
Great work. Yeah, the team effort,
No, I know, I can see that, I mean, it's a great concept, really great.
Yeah, everything we have, one step at a time.
Yes.
Well done, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much, everyone, that's great. I really appreciate that.
I think Thursday, because I'm meeting with Thursday.
Did you break a skateboard pole?
It's a,
Is it up higher? Yeah, is that one of those little tiny bones that floats around in here?
yeah.
Get that into hard plaster right away, get a plastic.
Well, they
I've been
said-
through this already.
Yeah,
Yes, I have.
you skateboard?
No. No.
No, they said this and then like call a,
Denver's table.
Sorry?
Denver's table.
what do you call it?
No.
Bone doctor. to
No.
come.
Yeah, well, when you go to
In the
the
association.
ask him for a prescription
In
for.
the association.
What they do is they make you a
I'll find
plastic
it later.
cast molded to
Is he
your.
actually involved with?
And it's got a thumb hole through it, just got laces down the back.
Yeah,
And
I'll find
the
it.
beauty of it is you can shower with it on.
Yeah.
And it just works like a charm.
See that one?
So go
Wait.
for it. Really, huge difference.
Thank you.
Tim, what's Dan Perk's title? Is he,
Dan Park is our architect.
okay. He's not
Architect
part
for
of
the
the
health
committee,
center.
but he-
No, he's not.
Okay, that's what I thought, yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
I heard my name.
That's okay. Just wanted to know who you were.
Your name's getting written down.
Where you
Who was
coming
that
from?
guy?
Who is that guy?
Who is that guy? Okay, we're just gonna go back and do a little housekeeping here. We opened up this agenda, but we didn't do the approval of the agenda because we didn't have quorum, so now that we have quorum, does anybody have anything they want to add to the agenda? All right, then, somebody want to move to accept? Thank you, Fritz, second. Thanks, Tom. All in favor? All right, 4 of us, that's good. And,
Four.
yeah,
One,
1, 2, 3,
4,
4.
5. Okay. We need 5 for quorum. Yeah.
Who's the other voting member?
Daniel.
Oh, Daniel,
Fritz.
oh,
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Who are we missing today? Sorry, I didn't. we're missing
Counselor Hawking,
Hawking.
Counselor Nicholson, the
Makes
CAO, the
Oh,
CFO.
they're all voting members, that's right.
They're all voting.
Thank you. And so the adoption of the minutes, anybody have anything they want to add there? Okay, nobody, good. Move? Second, all in favor? Okay, good, 5. Okay, so we're back to where we were. Public comments. You got anything?
Actually, I do.
Oh, good.
Just a concern, the whole parking.
Yes.
I think it's gonna come back to bite you with, you're looking at it now, and it's like, I look at, I'm from West Vancouver for most of my life, and in the early 80s, when they started to redevelop portions of Dunbury and Ambleside, it was the beginning of the relaxation of parking demands. You know, people were getting older, they're gonna be not driving at the time, they're gonna be driving smaller cars, all that sort of thing. So what's happened now is if you look up, I used to live on Gordon, just up behind Municipal Hall.
Yeah.
17th or 16th and 17th, I've got cars parked all the way up to Inglewood.
Yeah.
Now-
They're all down in the shopping area.
And so it's employees,
Yeah.
it's people visiting, what have you. And what's happening now in the Cove, we're just chasing the cars around.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And this myth that people are not going to be driving, it's crazy. You know, as long as you can get a form of fuel that is socially acceptable, you're going to be riding that thing around
Yeah.
forever. So I just don't. I just look at that housing there. You're going to have to park down. People be parking all the way along Miller.
Except there's no
Yeah.
parking. Except there's no parking on Miller.
Well, there you go. But where there's a will, people, you know, like you're chasing them up off of Dorman and all this back. It's a horrible thing to worry about, but it's going to come back and contaminate the Cove.
I think we're really aware of that. This has something to do with facilitating these two users, and you're absolutely right. It's just like it will be pushed till it possibly finds a location. I think it's gonna happen there though, is that if you want to do more kind of free land giveaway with no request for parking,
Yeah.
it's not gonna work.
No.
And what we earlier thought, I think even Tom, you said it really clearly, is that the best use of the parcel in the end is something with higher value.
Yeah.
That's the only way.
That's
parking.
exactly, that's the only way you're gonna get
Parking.
underground parking, I can guarantee it.
Because I think you can get that lot there,
Yeah.
if they build on top of that, so to speak, sits low enough, or they have to put it lower, and they build on top of that, and that's all private, and that's part of the cost of acquiring the land for a developer. It sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah.
Then you're getting somewhere, because like, I think what we're forgetting here is that, you know, also the idea is that it's a vibrant village that people can actually get to. You know what I mean? So,
That's right.
you're absolutely right.
The other thing, sorry, you know, I don't say any more, is the cost to construct that building, and who can do it.
Yeah.
We're not being blessed with under budget bids coming in the projects we've got on the books right now.
Wow. Yeah.
And, you know, this is sort of 15% contingency, is it working?
No.
Assuming we're gonna, and it also means you're gonna be using QSs a lot more than you ever used before, just to chase down
Cost?
the unknowns.
Yeah. Well, you have to, because I think the margins are just so small. The margins are so tight that it's just so hard to find something that's actually gonna work. You know, there's some return on investment in that. You know, just, anyway, that's, yeah. It's tough. I mean, it's not, you know, on Bowen Island, it's not like the developers are beating down the doors here looking for property to build on.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's no question about that. They're coming, yelling and screaming. You know, it's not a real healthy situation. Anyway, so we went through Judy McLeod, which was a good exercise. So 4.2, now this is, of course, where we're going with the densification of Snug Cove. And I think, you know, we've talked about this before, and I'm just wondering if this should be done in a closed or not, unless we keep it very general. Because it, yeah. So what's the feeling? I mean, I think we should be going for 4 stories in the Cove, and I think we could recommend that to council to at least look at it and you know, send it out to staff. Obviously, that's going to go right to Daniel, and he's going to come back with a report to council of some shape or description. Yeah. You know, and then we could talk about all these single detached houses that are on lots all through the Cove, and maybe think about, you know, maybe upgrading them. Maybe there'd be some stimulation for people to build a different style of home with their. I mean, we got that one going in down at obviously at the Snug Cove House. And that whole development, I think it's cool. I think it's going to be great. And those houses are big. I was surprised.
Yeah.
They're getting so much house on those lots.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to be really good for you know, for housing people. There's no question. I think you know, there's 3 on the way there now. I think it might be another one starting.
Yeah, another one's just coming onto the ground.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
The
Excellent.
4-plex.
Can I just make, you're building the same sort of house on the Evelyn project, just off Caraway.
Yeah.
You can
Oh, are
see- Yeah, that's what's like, big surprise.
Yeah. But you know, there's nothing wrong with the row housing either, and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
We can certainly be thinking of that. So I think that's one thing we've got to think about going forward. I don't know. How do you guys all feel about that?
Well, with lot 3, but I kind of think is that to put access roads on it is almost a pity, and if it would be a larger development with a big kind of hidden ground, the low-grade parquet,
Yeah.
that you just have access, and you can make it work for the building code, because you can even see here how much land is gobbled up by access, it's just crazy.
Well, I
I
think that piece, the remainder of lot 3, really lends itself to having some underground parking, like you said, on the lower side of from the topography, just put it in there, you're gonna have to fill it in anyway, so why not put some parking in there? I think it's too steep to actually, you'd have to blow away half the thing to put any accommodation down there, but I think you could sneak some parking in there pretty inexpensively. So it's the same price of putting in concrete really in there, so that, that's certainly.
This is
something
going
to
more
think about.
to one large parcel for
I can't
developer. There's more-
help but think that too, Fritz. I mean, I just, my memory goes back to Whistler, where I had a lot of involvement and that whole idea of putting everything underground and building the town center up over the parking facility just works so well to create all of that pedestrian organization through the town without any mix of vehicles. I mean, to me, it's just amazing how well that works. And on Bowen Island, to me, this is one of the first places that we really have an opportunity to really seriously consider that type of consideration. Just looking at what we've got left here on this site south of where the medical center in BIRCH is.
Can you wind that up a bit, Steph?
Sorry?
Can we see the rest of the lot? I don't know if that one goes all the way
This
down.
slide?
Well, just the downside here, the rest of that lot.
Okay. Oops. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, like that.
This one?
A little more if you get rid of
I don't know as far down as.
Go back further.
Yeah, that's going to be the,
Can you go back to the, get in there.
That's the top.
Okay.
So go down. Oops.
Just go back to that one again with that. The configuration that we were looking at for a second. I'll just explain what I was thinking. Yeah, so on this slide here, for example, the piece that with this plan, the piece that we've left that is developable to the south of the roadway coming in, the proposed roadway. There's an obvious connection between that and this area that we're potentially setting aside for parking, where you could essentially attach a development form that would go over top of the parking and utilize that frontage and make something much more comprehensive out of what becomes of all of that, and still retain a large component of parking, which I think is going to be absolutely necessary in conceptualizing how the rest of this is going to go. So I actually quite like that.
I certainly like that because this is still quite usable.
Absolutely.
In here.
Yeah.
and actually. that
Going
form-
forward, I mean, the parking should be down along here up against this fence line, but I didn't, it's the most
Well, again, I
Well,
think
I think
desirable
you
spot
can-
for it.
I think you can expand that pattern of parking underneath that just extends.
Yeah.
Now, all it's
Yeah,
gonna
exactly.
take is
Yeah.
dynamite.
I know. And Fritz, I've said it
Lots of
before.
dynamite and cement.
Fritz, your rock has to go.
You're
But,
not?
there actually is a lot of rock to it. It's very.
I know there is. Yeah.
It's not level one building.
No, no,
And it's
not at
actually
all.
quite beautiful too.
No, it is. It's a beautiful feature, but I think in order to create the densification here,
Yeah.
you don't have a choice. You really have to utilize everything
Maybe
you've got there.
you stop like a certain distance from
Yeah,
the trunk road.
yeah, right.
But
Yeah.
the height of for instance, the 4-story, right? That was already in the Snug Cove master plan from, what is it called, dialogue,
Yeah.
from Alan Baldwin on this. It says that the strongest recommendation throughout the report is 4 stories. And they said it's the only way to get anything built.
Mhm.
Now we're 10 years further, nothing has been built. So you have to congratulate them, you're completely right.
Yeah.
But so if you talk about 3 and 4, it isn't just the massing, it's actually economics.
Yes, I understand that.
Like it's the site work and everything else.
Yeah.
And for parking, it is the cost of the parking. So for instance, if at a certain point, Poland would have to go even higher than 4 stories, if it's well done, maybe that's okay too. But that would has something to do with that,
Yeah.
with the need for parking. And the parking is there for the people who live there, but also for basically to make sure that the village is vibrant.
There's that fine balance between housing and densification, and you look all over Vancouver, that's what they're having to do is
Yeah.
densify. There's no question about it.
But
Why should we be any different?
That's
But
right.
you also notice, like in arcades, right, that people think, oh, there's bicycles, you just put against the walls.
Yeah.
It isn't like that.
Yeah.
They take a ton of space.
Yeah.
Like if you look at, because like it is like one unit may need one parking stall and 4 bicycles
Yeah,
at 2 feet
Or a
or
motorcycle.
6 feet
motorcycle,
with access, right?
scooter.
So if you look at these towers, it is like huge areas for bicycles.
Yeah.
You know, with all these electric bikes and all that. That
Yeah.
becomes also something that should be in the Bible, clearly stated.
Absolutely,
How
no
many
question.
parking spots for bicycles?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just, first of all, it's an
Yeah.
more people going to not park in their garage and fill it up with everything else.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's already
That's an
happening.
issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the other comment I would make is that, you know, I think in some ways, in comparing ourselves as a community to many others, I think that Bowen's actually got a chance to get in ahead of the curve here a bit in terms of getting this kind of thinking in the minds of Bowen Islanders with a concept that really works within that close proximity of the hub of the ferry and the commercial core. I mean, there's, you know, most of the time that these decisions are forced on the municipality and council because of the other pressures that are created within the build out of the community.
Correct.
This one is actually being conceptualized ahead of that
Yeah.
pressure.
Yeah.
And it gives you a much better opportunity to do some really creative planning.
Yeah, no, that's
So I
quite,
really like
quite
that.
true,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but Barb, about a little bit about the recommendations that we had in one of the previous meetings, is that you have to keep that part of lot 3. You have to kind of hold on to it until it has its maximum value. That means nothing happens with it for years.
Right.
And then I just wonder if how the community responds to that, because there is need for housing. And then I thought, well, at least then we also had a recommendation that the lots on the, what do you call it, the west side maybe, of Millers would be rezoned.
Yes, that's right. We
Or
talked about
I
that.
actually have 2-tier zoning, so that the municipality gets something back for the 2nd tier, right? The
Yeah.
2-tier zoning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then that is something that could be done proactively. There's no reason why that couldn't be done now. It's just like,
That's right.
it's just like, because like with the 2-tier, you don't give anything away. You just,
No.
if you want a 2nd tier,
Yeah,
show
pay
your
for it.
cards and help us implement community objectives. So there's no reason why, it's true, right? We can just pre-zone that as amenity zoning with the objectives from the OCP or from whatever plan we have for the village.
So communities can density bonus
Yeah.
in the zone.
Same
You
thing.
get kind of, but not entirely.
No, true.
So in terms of, like, generally, that's why, like, in, you know, Vancouver, when they do a plan, they say, this is what we're gonna allow you to rezone to, and this is the amenity you're gonna pay.
Yeah.
But then you still have to rezone, because that's when they can still say, now you're gonna provide your amenity contribution.
Yeah, but there's also something about clarity, right? So like the
Yeah.
more clarity there is, the easier it is to get somebody
Yeah.
to buy into
So, I mean,
it.
and I mean, I've talked to this committee about it before, and I've been talking to Glenn and other departments about it, in terms of the rezoning application we have on the.
Yeah.
Is to come to council with a motion to say, we need to look at the whole thing.
Yes.
Instead of having a model.
Yeah.
Right.
For all the lots, so that's kind of what it is, to then have, you know, council approve and say, yes, this is what we wanna see for everything. This guy can rezone for that, but everybody else would have the same package available.
We should,
But is-
it would be nice if you brought that concept
Yeah.
to a meeting, maybe our next meeting or something, I don't
So,
know,
I mean,
how's the timeline?
It would come to council first, and council would have to refer it.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
But then you have to be clear what the desired amenity is for the municipality.
Yeah.
Like for instance, yeah, if there's a pathway goes across, you can say there has to be whatever. There has to be parking, there has to be pathways, there has to be whatever.
Yeah, no, Miller, that's not so much the issue, right? Miller, it's more, it's like, yeah, like the sewer water infrastructure, senior road.
Say again, please?
It's about like sewer water infrastructure in terms of adding additional lots on Miller and what would it be infrastructure implications, and it's about, in part, it's about like roadways, so it's about how is senior road, seniors lane gonna operate? Or are they gonna access, are people accessing Miller, are they accessing seniors road, you know, on those little lots that are
Yeah,
there? And then even like what's the build form gonna be, so, the OCP had talked about townhouse development at certain levels of density, and our rezoning application is a duplex and a sixplex on the one lot.
But would you set the maximum density that high that you encourage people to consolidate into larger lots? Or do you specifically set the zone for the existing lots, and then other people can repeat that, but is that
I would like to have some sort of scheme that encourages consolidation.
Say again, please?
I would like to have some sort of scheme that encourages
Okay.
consolidation of the
I
lots.
agree,
totally
because the
agree.
lots vary in width, and you may want a house development, but you may only be able to get 2 units on a lot, which is not really a townhouse, it's just.
But it's something about the scale, right? Like if you look at the old scale, we look at
Yeah.
old towns, very small scale. So then the proposed development still should have a small scale. It just happens to have maybe, you know, a more efficient or a larger footprint for parking or for whatever it is.
Well, and we may have, you know, on those lots, a separate unit, you know, that you can rent out as part of it. That's something that would be a big incentive. If you can build that on,
But when you talk about like a smaller unit, in an
well,
apartment, or
a house, and I know that when I lived in Toronto, I lived in the top of the house. There was a floor up there, you know, with heat and stuff, and I was fully contained.
Yeah.
I had a stove and everything. And
the city
Well,
of
that would
Vancouver,
be
there's
like a suite in the house.
a suite in the house,
Yeah.
and it may be a special for that district. That would be a good incentive, I think.
But we probably already have that.
We
in
are,
that area,
I
don't we?
think Bowen's already doing that now, and I think it's,
Secondary suites.
yeah, secondary
Yeah,
suites
So,
are
but
legal.
with stoves?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
self-contained.
Oh,
But
okay.
is that, would that be zoned in that area for that?
well,
I mean, sort of to be determined, I guess.
Yeah,
Like in terms of what would the future model be?
yeah.
Yeah.
so what the city of Vancouver does, which is kind of interesting, is to do both secondary suite and lock-up suites.
Yeah,
And a lock-up suite is that if a unit is that small, they can still have a lock-up suite. And you can use them either in combination with your own part of the suite, that will make
Okay.
a 3 or 4 bedroom suite.
Yeah,
But if you close the door and it's fire rated, whatever, you can rent that part out, or maybe you have your other part of your family living there.
yeah.
But they call it lock-off, and they think it's very likely that people actually rent it out. And they're small, and they can be rented out at a lower cost. So in their new duplex zoning, they say if the lot is big, like we're doing 160 feet right now, you can have 2 starter units.
Yeah,
I don't think that the idea is to do that, whatever. And each of them can have a secondary suite.
Oh,
But
okay.
if the lot gets smaller, they can have a lock-up suite. And the difference is that the lock-up has to be connected to the house.
yeah.
Because it gives that flexibility for use, while the secondary suite doesn't need to be connected. Can we
Disconnect.
close that?
Yeah, yeah.
You don't need a stair
That's
to
interesting.
connect it.
You know, obviously, we have to look at the infrastructure too, and the serviceability of these areas, and whether we have a capacity to do with that, you know. Be nice to put an eightplex on every lot, but if we can't service it, that's.
Comment, I was gonna listen, they're not from my 2 cents from an engineering perspective. I actually really support a lot of, if not everything that's been said. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think rather than worrying as much about height, I think one of the things that I think can be done really well, provided form and character and architectural controls
Yeah,
exactly.
are also offered, I think it can be a wonderful. In fact, when I was in the process of moving over
Yeah,
to Bowen Island and experiencing Snug Cove for the first time, it already has this warm, wonderful, cozy feeling. It
Yeah.
really does. And I think that can be maintained as long as there's proper controls. Maintaining walkability and feel and the connection to nature, I think would be really important. From an engineering perspective, this area is serviced by, and I think this is a positive, it's serviced by a sewage treatment plant. We already do know, through looking at some of the growth that's already projected, that there's a near-term day when upgrades will be required to the treatment plant
Yes.
and likely the outfall pipe in the ocean as well. So there definitely are some looming infrastructure costs that are coming. That's gonna happen even under the
Yes.
current plan. So I think that shouldn't be seen as a deterrent. But I think it is to recognize that there's already adequate growth, that there are some, what I call offsite costs, some infrastructure costs, and I think identifying a cost recovery strategy is part of it. You can't continue to give away free services. There are costs that are going to be funded here. From a water perspective, again, it's probably serviced by one of the best, likely the most stable water system on the island, and that's Cove. It's about to have a state-of-the-art water treatment plant that will provide great water. It's scalable. I don't think it's planned for this growth, but it's scalable. Daniel and I have chatted, and the parking is an issue. It is something that we've talked about when we're doing a traffic impact assessment.
Yes,
Talking
especially,
about number of vehicles. I think there is concern certainly with the traffic flow and safety, and we talked about sight lines, et cetera, the Dorman, Miller Senior Road intersection area, lighting, just traffic movement. So I think we just need to be alive to looking at that. What else can I say? I guess the only one tidbit is we recognize that despite the fact that we have a great water system, water supply, we have limited capacity in terms of the ability to deliver fire flow down to Snug Cove. Because the source is so far away. We're actually looking at strategies, and I think we're maybe needing to find a location to put an additional storage tank somewhere right in Cove, which would prevent having to upgrade whatever it is, 1 or 2 kilometers of water main. Be closer to because the demand is here for fire flow. Right now, the water treatment plant, as it was designed, currently has a big storage tank, but no provisions to actually get that fire flow down into Snug Cove. So right now we're looking at downscaling that reservoir and then finding a location.
Can you use salt water like you do in Vancouver?
Well, they can, but it needs a dedicated system to do that, or
A separate
or a
system.
dedicated, yeah. Yeah, it can't be
Is that- is it a better use of water than
Well,
for
it's
drinking water?
it's
or-
an expense. It's an expense to have 2 different systems. Yeah, I mean, it's. I don't think I have a succinct answer to that. The city of Vancouver will draw on its potable water firefighting system, the salt water system as a backup.
It's a separate loop, right? That
Yeah.
runs through downtown.
It's very expensive to have a separate loop, and then because then you have to look after it. Salt water is extremely expensive on all the infrastructure and all the pumps that are required. So, I mean, it's certainly an option. I wouldn't say it's the right solution without a lot of consideration. But I don't think, I don't think we're in a case where we should be considering a completely different source because it would have to be pumped up. I think the best, certainly foreseeable future is just to look at additional storage closer to the source, or closer to the demand.
If Bowen Island would send out a request for proposals or so, like, could it be clear for what's available for which one? Like, for instance, for the lower part of lot 3?
Yeah.
I mean, like, if they would send something out tomorrow, okay, and then say how much is available for those things. Like, if you take the lot 3, the lower part, right, it's undeveloped, that we just talked about, right?
Yeah.
And you say you send out a request for expressions of interest or for proposals by developers. Then they want to know exactly what we're talking about. Like, is it serviced?
For sure.
Or what does it take to get serviced? Like, how much money do you need for them?
Yeah.
You can do that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, great. Good.
Yeah.
Well,
We had to do this, and that was one of my recent tasks, actually, for the municipality to consider the sale of that.
Area one.
Area one, yeah, yeah.
But
Oh, yeah,
it was to understand the infrastructure implications of that. So I went through this exercise, so yes, we have a pretty good understanding of the state of that, the infrastructure, like concurrently over what the upgrades are going to be.
would it be worthwhile just to do like a test, not necessarily going out to the public, but this
Yeah.
type of
Yeah.
request for proposals that we would, or council, or maybe consider, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, we can, whether or not there's, we know that the water treatment plant and wastewater treatment plant, those are the big ticket items. Water treatment is not that difficult to win or operate, but the treatment plants are, and those I would suggest may have a threshold. I think what we should do is probably expand what we've done to date and understand if we know that there's triggers that will cause upgrades, but are there upgrades in the sense that, we're just adding a component? If it actually causes a bigger facility, more land, that's a more extreme cost implication. There may be a threshold.
We could build a second floor, maybe somewhere else, different location,
I'm not sure where you'd find the land. It's possible, but we're definitely getting into a radically different cost implication if you need new land. So what I would suggest in that case is we just do a little bit. It's not a big exercise. We can just extrapolate the work that we've already done and identify what's the threshold population that these particular plant facilities could support. And then at least you know that you're not entering into, if you can start planning around numbers that are bigger than that, then you're not entering into
Never land, yeah.
new stratosphere of infrastructure costs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing we also have to be conscious of it, is we have to be making some money here for the municipality to cover these infrastructure costs and everything else. That's a big part of this, and I understand the need for rental housing and all kinds of different social housing and stuff like that, but at a certain point in time, we've got to be making.
And I think part of that, and sort of just a closing comment, is doing enough market research to know what's the demand here. My sense is that demand is rising, but you've got to also make sure that you're creating something that will be in demand. Because ultimately, if it's in demand, people want to be here, and they will find it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
We talked about that exact
Trying to
point
create
at
something that
one of our
people don't
previous
want
meetings.
is going to be dead.
Yeah, we talked about that, and one of the things we mentioned was the notion that before the municipality feels forced to do something on lot 3 in terms of housing, we should really be looking to the private sector to get some of this multifamily built, so that we can then see how the market responds to it, both in terms of price and demand, and that'll provide really important guidance to how the next forms and shapes of developments will fit into what that marketplace is telling us.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, while we were talking about infrastructure, I know there have been streetscape plans indicated in a lot of the Cove planning, and I want to do we have a sort of approved sort of design for streetscape, ultimate streetscape, so when these projects go in, they can put in those improvements?
Short answer, no. Which is why when you walk the sidewalk right now, they're all different colors.
Yeah, it's
One of the projects that our new planner, Jennifer's just started, is working with the design panel on revisions to our design guidelines, which if you've looked at them, look very, they're nicely photocopied from the 80s. They're great. So, and that's something that we'd look for is sort of those new design guidelines, and so that would be the streetscape, when it comes to building, so this is what you're doing on the public side of it. I think more generally in terms of densification, like we're talking about in terms of infrastructure costs, I mean, before we would say, let's just increase the height and the zoning of the village commercial zone. We want to have understandings of what those infrastructure costs are, and so we're not just saying, here, and you get to build more, but it's like, but there's some rationale. We're saying now you're gonna pay your fair share of infrastructure costs.
Yes.
Because I'm assuming like when we talk about, densification in the Cove, it's not just about height, but it's about increases to FSR as well. So like, like the distillery maxed out the floor area that they were allowed to build on that site.
Yes.
And they did that, part of the building is 3 stories and part is 2, and they can max out their FSR. So any of the other places could max out their current floor area. Parking wasn't an issue. They could max out their floor area without needing to go higher. So if we said, well, now you can go higher, but you have the same floor area. It's kind of like, okay, now go higher, right? And so, so I'm assuming it's not just height we're talking about, we're talking about increasing the floor area. But to do that, we want to know what the infrastructure costs are, have a scheme for people to pay.
I like Fritz's idea of amenity bonusing, say, well, you can do this, but if you want to do this and densify, then it's going to cost you.
What I've seen some places do, so one, it's like you can density bonus for any number of stuff, but you could say, so you do a scheme where you say, I think right now we're 1.5 FSR.
Yeah.
I can't remember offhand, my computer died, but say it's that, and say you can go to 1.7 or 1.7 or 2, whatever the number is, but to do that, you have to do, some places say that has to be, now that has to be rental housing. So you do 1.5 generally, and you do 0.5. Or people say, well, you can get extra, but only if you provide underground parking. It's a common one downtown, like downtowns of smaller communities do, and they say you can do more, but to do that, you have to be going underground.
Right.
So there's ways of doing it where we're saying you can build more, but there's something built in.
But the rezoning also has to be in place.
Yeah, that's
the
true,
zoning
like
has to be in place for that property.
Yeah, that would be a zoning we could say for like all of the village commercial zone, and say, okay, now you can have your standard what you had before, or you can do a little bit more, but to do that more, you have to hit something that we specified.
Yeah.
That's where I'm a big fan of comprehensive development.
Yeah.
Zones, to me, they provide the municipality with so much more flexibility in terms of each of the building components that fall into that. And so that you don't run into this issue of whether a creative developer comes along and wants to do something different than the zoning per se requires. As Fritz said, zoning provides restrictions, it doesn't provide inducements. And so, whereas to me, the comprehensive development approach, actually there is a process that provides more incentivization through that than you get through zoning.
Yes and no. I mean, so we're 3,500 people and we have 21 comprehensive development zones. And then we have a number of zones which are not comprehensive development zones, but essentially are because there's only one property that's owned as one zone. So for a community size, we have quite a few CD zones, and they work like the pub is a CD zone, and Village Square is a CD zone.
Right.
But there's also still things we would do with just the village commercial to say, okay, as a sign for those little lots along there, so saying, okay, you don't have, like, we're sort of shaping them to say, this is the direction that you could go.
Right.
Or, there was the option to come for zoning, but it's like, this is your broad sandbox you're playing in to start with.
Well, I think densification is obviously has got to be one of the the hot spots that we go to, and it's I looked at the terms of reference and that sort of thing, and it isn't directly involved in the terms of reference, but as far as producing housing, and which is what our goal is here, and try to figure out how to get housing and how to get people, incentivize people to build. I think it's very important that we do look at that. So I think that should be definitely one of our future exercises. And we talked about that the last time we met, and I think we were going to talk about it at this meeting, but we had something else to deal with. So I think that should be probably the core of our next meeting. And Daniel, I don't know if you can, and it sounds a lot more complicated than it would appear. Just to open up some opportunities and some flexibility on some of the lots in the Cove to make some different choices. And then when do you think that other one's coming to the council?
I think I just did my agenda planner, so I think I had it the 25th, like the November.
Oh, really?
Second November meeting.
Oh, okay.
There's a couple things I need to firm up, but
Yeah.
that was my.
Can you talk about the direction that you're pushing that, or do you want to wait?
I mean, broadly speaking, in terms of Warren Miller, is to say we need to look at comprehensive
Yeah.
of the Miller lots and not proceed with the one-off, but look at the whole.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be interesting, because that will probably push that back to us, I would think. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, probably I would be saying we need to like engage a consultant firm
Yeah.
to do some of the pieces around the sewer, the water, the traffic study, potentially the bill form piece. I think are essentially like an engineer to look at it and a firm that does that to do those. But it probably also involves referrals to committees, so.
I actually expected the deal to come out really well, because like if you compare Seniors Lane with the lane in the city, like, this is exactly what lanes are supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure that the cars don't go out on Miller. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So.
Which is something now, I just, it's a little off topic, but Glenn was good enough to come out and take a look, because we were talking about accesses. What's her name? Not Snug Cove, not Snug Cove, I was with the other one, Bowden. You know, I got, Robert got back to me again and said, we're still interested in doing that swap. Now, having said that, I just looked at a letter he sent to us. And it was, what's the date on that?
September 10th.
And he hasn't got back to us since, but, so, we're still looking at that piece of property over there, and then the general consensus around the table was, well, listen, we don't want to give up that access to lot 2 if we don't have another viable access. So Glenn was good enough to go out and have a look at the sites, and do you want to talk about the conversation we had? I mean, basically, he doesn't, and I gotta go along with him, he doesn't like the idea of coming off Miller, because it's just not in order.
Well, I think there's, the current access point there off Miller. It looks unattractive at first glance, but it's no less attractive than the alternative off Miller Road either. The land swap to me isn't offering any gain. I actually think access, I can imagine that a property of that size would want to maintain 2 access points coming off the side of the school, actually.
It's too bad, I was looking for that map, it was out on the wall.
It's in Bonnie's office.
Oh, it's in Bonnie's office now? Okay.
On the other side of Erie
Yeah.
off Trunk Road, actually, or I think more favorable.
Yeah, well, and Mount Gardner means further,
Yeah.
by the school.
Sorry.
I mean, that would
Yeah, to me, that's the
Trunk
most
Road and-
logical by a long shot.
Yeah. And, I've always been, had quite a battle going on about bringing it in front of the community center if we get the go-ahead on that. And I don't know, maybe it could be, like you say, just an emergency access. Because I think the concept is you've got to be able to get out of there from 2 locations.
Yeah.
But I think if you did have the one, I guess we'd have to go to Metro and see if they'd be willing to, Metro Parks, and see if they'd be willing to give us a little bit of land.
Well, that's where I think the discussion should go.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
definitely by far the best
Yeah.
access there.
Does Mill Road have enough right-of-way to do a 3-lane road so that you have some turn lanes stack up?
Geez, I
I mean, it's not as big, that's why when we're doing this lot 3 subdivision, we're expanding Miller to make it the full 20
How much
meter.
wider is it going to go?
It's to make it 20 meters
Okay.
wide, and so
Yeah.
is it now, you need to go, it's probably more than 15, but it's less than 20.
So only a little over 60 feet,
Yeah.
which is not enough
No.
So again, we're talking
to,
about
because then that would have to do the
swapping
sidewalks and trails
this
and
piece
everything.
out here for this piece here.
Yeah.
And of course,
topography is quite steep all the way in through here though. So this is quite attractive here, but you're still left with a bit of a challenge of getting up in through here, whereas coming in through here or in through here, opens up a bit of the topography on the sides is.
Keep in mind though, that parking area looks attractive because it was excavated. It's not the natural grade in there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, if it wasn't blasted, see, even that's a bonus, eh? Yeah. If you get excavated, that's a bonus.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's just,
But did you, Gary, just to finish that conversation though, did you two look at that potential access where they were looking for that land swap? Did you actually look at
up here,
that
well,
possibility?
Glenn went up there, I was involved with that in the last council.
Yeah.
It came out to be particularly expensive, it was the area, I don't know, $200,000 just to get the blasted hole up there. But you know what, I was told that's what it was. But even Glenn will say that's probably not the best. And coming onto Miller Road, this move.
Yeah, it's just before that corner and where the lagoon is and all that sort of stuff, yeah.
I just don't see, I think there's something attractive about this parcel because it's larger and it has other potential value uses of it.
Yeah.
But in terms of an actual access, I think it's basically swap. It's equal, you're not.
Yeah, no,
You're not
this-
doing anything.
this isn't any good to us at all unless we get an access in there. That's the only value that there is to the municipality.
That's right.
So, what I will do though.
But that really mean, the only thing that really means though, Gary, is that you would have to have a definite alternative access route in mind that would be doable. In other words, whether it comes through Metro Vancouver's property or somebody, or we have something else, but that would have to be much better defined before the municipality would be in a position to be able to give up that other piece.
Well, yeah, there's, you know, the unfortunate thing, a conversation with Metro Parks is probably 2 years in the making. That's just the reality of it. I mean, I can talk about it. I can definitely give them a call and say, well, you know, is there any opportunity? Because they're interested in, you know, they don't mind giving up land. They'd rather do a land swap
Yeah.
or something they want a little bit more.
Right.
You know, which maybe there's something out there that they want. Because this isn't really, it's not
I know.
valuable to, you know.
Well, you really don't need much land up there on the north side, because that drops really pretty steeply into the parkland.
Well, it does. It's the further you get down here, the, you know, the better it gets. But SD 45, the school district here, I don't know. Do you think this is probably the boundary here?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, maybe they'd be willing to give up a little bit of their property too. And just come in, sort of, just come in like this. And of course,
You know, actually, that may
we have the
be,
bike park in here though, so.
that may be a better alternative in terms of somebody that might be interested in swamp. School might.
I mean, based on like when Kathy and I met with Metro Vancouver, we you know, we weren't directly talking about it. We weren't saying like, oh, and we're, you know, one day we might want this. They were pretty, you know, like that wasn't a thing they wanted to talk about. Having said that, and same with the school, I mean, the school probably look at it and say, well, why don't you just come in this side?
Well, yeah, of course.
I know,
But
Well, I just don't want to see that as a super highway. I mean, people have talked about it too, and if we did it on the road there, then we'd have to have some kind of pedestrian overpass there for
No,
the
you
children
don't
and
want-
stuff
you
like
don't
that.
want to get-
Well, no, seriously, I mean, the idea is if the community center is here, that there's a free flow of the children across to the community center and back.
But I mean, to me, where the growth potential for the school is out the back, right? That to me seems quite logical.
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't they maybe look to a potential land swap with an additional piece out the back of the
Yeah.
school lot in exchange for an access route through that side? I mean, they
Well, if
may
this
be
is
the
what
right
this is
party
like,
to.
just, you know, just give.
Yes,
this
exactly.
here and then come
That's
in
right.
there.
I mean, that might be a better option.
Swap.
Yeah,
I'll tell you, it'd be a lot easier to deal with
I
than
know they
Metro
would.
Parks, there's no question about
I
that.
agree.
Yeah, I've got some people at SD 45 I can talk to. So maybe I'll do that before our next meeting.
Yeah.
See if that goes in.
Because if we could nail that down, then obviously the rest of it falls into place.
Yeah, yeah.
It makes it so much easier to talk about.
Because we do have to resolve this before
We do.
anything happens with Bowen.
I agree.
With, Bowen Court. So, and, who knows, so it's been a month and a half, and they haven't got back to us. I know it's a difficult situation, but, because I think that would be a nice piece of property to have, and I think the other piece of property is useless to us,
Yeah.
unless we put a road in it.
Yeah.
Just following along with the agenda, and I'm just, we're just sort of TX here, and I think, I don't know if there's too much more we wanted to do. We sort of wanted to have a look at this, this strategic action, but maybe we can leave it till the next meeting. And I think we should concentrate on densification for our next meeting, unless something else comes up. And I think we're probably gonna get some kind of direction from council, I would think.
Well, I mean, I guess I would say, like my end of it is specifically to an application on the Miller.
Yes.
And that's what I
Yeah.
would be bringing to council, and then council would decide if they're referring or not.
But you are going to allude to the fact, is there going to be part of your recommendation that we look at all of it for?
I mean, it would be looking at that whole strip on Miller.
Yes.
Those single family lots,
Yeah,
yeah, yes, yeah. But so not the Cove, not the commercial properties.
But I think that will
strip.
trigger, or I could trigger,
Yeah.
the fact that it comes back to us.
Yeah.
And then it gives us a chance to really have a good look at it. And then get into the different models, like Fritz was talking about, get into the different models about how we can do this and stuff. And, I mean, there isn't that much residential area in the Cove. It's pretty much
Service.
that, plus a few other little bits and pieces along Trunk Road.
With the servicing and access at both ends. Like,
Yes.
There's a whole bunch of things about those properties that
Yeah,
really make it conducive to thinking
Yep.
about a more dense form of development.
and they really should be a lot more dense than they are.
When you read the OCP,
Yeah,
which I did, and when you read the Snug Cove master plan,
yeah,
what kind of strikes me is that if you really try to figure out why they are created like that, it's still all about moving density, residential density, from the rest of the island to the Cove. That's how.
oh,
it's
density
justified.
transfer, yeah.
Yeah, but that's how it's all justified, and I think as a committee, we should at least have some kind of discussion about it, because like I can see somebody stand up in a meeting and say, well, what you're doing doesn't meet the OCP, doesn't meet this, doesn't meet that, right?
Yeah,
So I kind of think that somehow we have to find a new way of thinking about how people live in Bowen. Because if you read it, it kind of means that everything that's outside the Cove has to stay kind of rural because
Yeah.
it looks attractive,
Yeah.
but nobody can do anything with it. But as if a sustainable form of living cannot exist using more of the existing residential areas that are outside the Cove.
yeah.
And I think that really needs some discussion, because the least expensive, you have all these properties that have tons of potential to add something to,
But
and it's not used.
That's right.
It's kind of a very Cove-centric attitude, which they have, is that everybody wants to live in the Cove because it's really nice and close to everything, and you can just walk around it, it's all very utopian and everything. And then if you want to go out into the country's always going to be there because we're not allowed to build out there.
But so the justification is like, if you read it, I can kind of see these older committees sitting here, and their objective was actually not to do anything with the rural land.
Ah, I know.
And therefore, it should be the Cove.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right.
Yeah, that's it.
That's really behind it,
Yeah,
if you
it
go
is.
back 20 years or so. But then, I find that like, I don't believe it's true. I think that Bowen should realize that people can live in a sustainable way and, like using more of the land that has already some form of development on it. That doesn't mean you have to build like crazy everywhere, but just to like called a gentle densification, but also to have some other areas of the island where it can actually be quite appropriate to have a little cluster or something like that. But I mean, what's wrong with that?
I agree 100%.
Yeah, but
You know, whether it be Seymour Bay or Bowen Bay or
Yeah.
wherever, you know.
Because
I agree.
using the sort of conservation
Yeah,
development
yeah,
plan
Yeah.
does that sort of thing. End up with smaller lots, you save open space corridors and all that kind of thing. And I think that's preferable to just platting out small lots.
yeah, of course, because
Yeah.
everything has happened incrementally. And if you look at if you drive through Bowen, you may think that it's all forest and ground land. It's not. Like, tons of it is private land.
Yes.
You know, and just it's sitting there that one day incrementally it will be subdivided, like has happened over the last 100 years,
yeah,
right? So that if you have, but I think actually using, you know, the conservation development approach, that you actually can preserve more land for the future as park, because that's part of the amenity that you get. You get provide a perfect, beautiful park system, like a trail system, right? You can
Yeah.
do all of that.
yeah,
You can probably put in bicycle corridors, whatever you want. But it's just that mindset. But if you look at OCP, it is not there. If you look at the Snug Cove master plan, it isn't there. I mean, the master plan for Snug Cove itself is kind of good, but if you read what it's
Yes.
based on, it's still based on the idea that there's no development anywhere else, and the density
all development
is
goes
supposed to be
into it.
transferred.
Yeah.
So like,
Which
if you-
I don't know how
And-
healthy that is either, but.
And by the way, I think I can only think of one case where there was a density transfer on Bowen.
But it doesn't work in the system.
And the reason for that is it doesn't work.
There's no value in it.
There's no value to it. The market value for that unit of density that you transfer somewhere else is very, very small.
But the also problem is, it takes I think the real core problem with that system is,
Yes.
first of all, it hasn't used, it hasn't been effective at all.
No.
But also, it's actually in the way of council using two-tier zoning or density, you know, like amenity zoning as
Yeah.
a tool.
Yeah,
Because you cannot suddenly do that, because now you lower the values that these people have traded in. It's almost like,
that's right.
there's supposed to be a market.
Exactly.
It's not true. Like,
No.
the tool of council is to have, like, if you don't have money, at least you have future density in your pocket.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
It can be
No,
used to
absolutely.
reach all kinds of perfectly good community objectives.
Yeah,
But there has to be a much greater incentive for somebody who's sitting on a large piece of property
yes,
to move their density on.
yeah,
There has to
absolutely.
be way
No,
more
no,
to
but
it.
they shouldn't have to move it over the law.
No.
From my point of view, it's just
Yeah.
useless.
I agree.
Because you can just allow more.
Yeah, because you don't get anything for it.
You don't.
You give up your density, you get zero at the other
No,
end.
it's useless.
right.
Nobody's going to do it.
No,
And nobody has done it, so that's.
No, exactly. I think Wolfgang did it on one little piece for whatever reason.
For maybe another
Yeah.
reason, right?
no, Wolfgang's idea of identity or density transfer is you get more density on this end,
Right.
and you transfer that out, you transfer that density
Away
out
from,
to Seymour Bay, and you get more density out there. So both places get more density. Not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I don't know if that's the way
it's
it
a
works.
misconceived notion.
Anyway.
Okay.
Okay, so listen, I'm a little conscious of the fact that we're missing two of our members here, so this has been a really good session, and it's been a great get-together again, and we can sort of plan our way going forward, but I think we should talk about densification at hopefully at the next meeting, and hopefully we'll get some guidance from council about what they want to do in that direction. Also, we could talk about, which is our main thing, is just looking at all these different pieces of property, the community lands, and how we want to deal with them. And I know we had a pretty tight timeline on there, and I'd still like to keep it pretty tight, so we'll just see how things roll. Now, one of the things that came up, because I screwed up so badly on the meeting time, is I'd like to sort of, if it's available to everybody, if we can pick sort of, and obviously we're gonna lose some people on this, but if we can pick sort of a good day at the beginning of the month or something like that, we can plan a few months ahead.
Sure.
It gives us the
I
access.
really like doing that doodle thing all day. every
Do
day.
you? Okay, I'll leave it with you. I'll leave it with you then. Oh, it's so much fun, eh? Yeah.
And we just look forward to seeing them so much.
So-
You can do strategic voting, right?
So we're missing Raj. And-
So, do you wanna get it, Raj doesn't like Thursdays.
Oh, he doesn't like Thursdays either
Early.
because he's going home, eh?
And I like Fridays.
Yeah, I know you like Friday.
Oh yeah, so Fridays during the day, actually. Ooh, because that was that. Kathy couldn't make that day, but now she's on leave, so why don't we do Fridays during the day?
Well, for a couple,
Me.
yeah, we'll try.
Daniel, they can go
Yeah,
see
I
your
love that.
babies.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got two, we've got housing and EDC around two of the
We won't
Fridays
get,
at
we won't
9:30.
get, won't get Raj though.
He can take Thursdays off. He does that sometimes.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah, that sounds fair. So, sorry, who's on there Thursdays?
So,
They're already in there?
EDC and housing are at 9:30. Housing's got the first Friday at 9:30, EDC's got the second Friday at 9:30. But you're welcome to do a 1 o'clock on either day, or you can take the third Thursday.
No, as long as I know what's coming up ahead of time, I'm good anytime.
So let's say, how does that sound for you
I
first?
said Thursday,
I mean,
sorry,
it's hard to
Friday.
say, it's gonna,
Well, it makes a big difference to me, but like if it's like at 9:30 in the morning, that still means that I could go to Vancouver as I
Yeah.
really need to.
1 o'clock.
Okay, so
Not
let's-
such a- But how about,
Say the third Thursday at 1 o'clock?
Thursday or
No, 1
Friday?
o'clock.
Why do I keep
No,
saying
he just
Thursday?
doesn't
I
work.
like
Friday.
mornings, like
Friday.
9:30 or so.
So, those,
Actually,
do they have,
8:30.
do they have,
Friday morning,
7:30.
8:30 is great for
Won't be
me.
anybody here at 7:30.
Third Friday at 9:30 a.m.
Friday,
Say
I
again,
do
please.
this night, the 15th, I'm at a meeting in town, if that's, we're talking about the November one, but I, like, other than that, every Friday is fine.
Well, we need.
Not that I,
We need
to
you.
say, okay, I'm gonna say I don't have
It's an all-day meeting in town.
to, it's a translate,
Like,
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So
boo.
it's- I'm in Saperton.
So what if we do,
Well, today's October 29th, so
So it could be the 20, like
do the
20
22nd.
November 22nd?
So Friday, November 22nd at 9:30.
9:30? So Daniel, you won't be here for that.
I won't
No,
be,
he-
no, I will be. I'm
Yeah.
away-
Oh, you will be?
I'm
Oh,
away
okay.
on the 15th,
Okay.
I'm at that meeting, but I have the 22nd free.
So we can do the fourth Friday, except we won't have anything in Christmas, in December.
No, let's leave it around there. How's that for everybody? Good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, that's a winner. You're in, Steph. And how about December?
So then December, do you want to do the 20th? It's getting close.
Oh, the 13th EDC, is that,
13th is EDC and at 9:30, unless,
so it could be the 20th, but I don't know if people are around, so.
I don't know.
Yeah, too close. Or maybe we just give December a bye, unless we want to have something early in December. Is there anything early?
and then we'd ask Fritz with his manners to do it at 1 o'clock. With our manners, I mean.
Is there anything early at 9:30? No way,
Not on Fridays.
because EDC's got the first.
Yeah.
There's housing and then EDC the first 2 Fridays.
Oh, it's Friday the
And then we
13th,
just
isn't
the
it?
20th.
Yeah, and it gets really close to Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's too
Difficult to get people. Well, I could do 1 o'clock, it's just that kind of, sits right in the middle of the day, right?
What do you want to, well, Fridays are weird, maybe
Maybe
like
take
3
the rest-
o'clock?
take
so
the
you
rest.
can
We
go
could have
and
a, we
then-
could have
I like it better.
a meeting on the 20th, afternoon drinks,
Yes.
celebrate the end of the year,
Yeah. Oh, I'm liking this. Okay, the 20th it is.
make it fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
If
But
everybody's
like
around,
3 o'clock
I'm
actually
up
is much
for it.
better, because then you can take.
Oh, no, I think we're back on the
up to
20th
30.
of December, 9:30.
How's that for everybody? Everybody there?
Which one you have to do now?
It's okay.
I don't know.
I think these
The
guys,
20th of December.
I'm a maybe,
Okay.
because, yeah, we're planning a trip.
Good. Good for you.
Well, don't go, you'll miss the.
Yeah. Miss the meeting?
Oh, I'm doing,
This is
my new nephews.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, do you want to put in a tentative 20th December at 9:30? Is that what it is?
Yep.
See
Okay,
what,
let's put
sure,
a-
see what comes out.
Yeah, let's just see how it looks. And we've got a couple other members, well, 3 other that,
what if I just send this out and see how it lands?
okay.
Kaboom. Okay.
I don't know, but I think this committee deserves a few drinks at the end of a calendar year to celebrate our wins.
Celebrate our victories.
Yes.
Yes.
I think we've done great.
You start with the drinks and then you have the meeting.
Yes, good idea, good idea.
To be extra effective, you know.
All right, well, that's a wrap then. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned. Glenn, thank you very much. And how do you look for those dates? All right?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
If you want me to participate,
Yeah. No, that'd be awesome. And then if I hear anything along the way about Bowen Court or anything, if they come forward, I'll send that along. Meanwhile, I'll talk to SD 45. I think those are the guys.
That'd be worth going to. Yeah.
I think that would be the easiest